After spending 15 years building Trillic Woodworks from a small regional company worth $8 million into a $73 million industry powerhouse, my time there came to an abrupt end. I was called into the glass conference room and informed that my services were no longer needed. The woman delivering the life-altering news, Vanessa Claymore, barely looked up from her tablet. "Everyone has to make sacrifices," she said, her perfectly manicured fingernails tapping on the glass. "Your compensation plan is out of date. We're cutting base pay by 40% and changing how commissions work." My name is Jeffrey Maddox, and I'm 52 years old. For 15 years, I had been the driving force behind Trillic's sales. While my business card read Senior Vice President, my true job was to keep the company running smoothly. I personally managed our top 10 accounts, cultivating those relationships through thousands of phone calls, countless dinners, and 15 years of anticipating problems before they arose. I knew about their children's names, their golf handicaps, and their vacation spots. When they had an issue, they'd call me before even contacting their own teams. Vanessa continued, "This new structure will encourage growth," as she casually slid a document across the table as if she were just ordering a coffee. She had joined the company 3 months ago after the acquisition, with her Harvard MBA and designer suits, and had spent her time analyzing spreadsheets instead of understanding the importance of relationships. I looked at the paper. It detailed a 40% cut to my base salary, a commission structure that would make it impossible to earn what I had been, and a reduction in benefits. My heart hammered in my chest as the reality of the situation sunk in. After building the company's entire sales foundation and helping turn it into an industry leader, I was being treated as if I were useless. "Is there a time frame for this change?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady even though the blood was draining from my face. "Effective immediately," she said with a tight smile, clearly expecting me to beg or negotiate. "We need everyone to be on board with the new direction." What she didn't realize was that she had just made the biggest mistake of her career. I closed the folder, stood up, and extended my hand. "Thank you for the clarity." Her smile vanished. She had expected an argument, desperation, or even tears. Instead, I gave her a handshake and a calm, dignified exit, leaving her staring as I walked away from 15 years of loyalty. That afternoon, I packed my belongings while Vanessa watched from her office window. I didn't make a scene. I just packed a photo of my daughters at their college graduations, a client pin set, and an old sales award. When I said goodbye to Thomas, our CFO, who had been with me since the beginning, his eyes conveyed what he couldn't say. This wasn't just about cutting costs. It was about getting rid of me entirely. The foundation of trust. However, they had missed one critical detail. In 15 years of building relationships, I hadn't just been selling products. I had been building trust. My father, who ran a small cabinet shop in Dallas, had taught me everything there was to know about wood joinery and finishes before I was 16. When I started at Trillic in 2010, something just clicked. I understood the products because I had grown up with them. I could discuss technical specifics with architects and pricing with purchasing managers in the same meeting. The original owner, Oliver Wainwright, recognized what I brought to the company. "You aren't just selling a product," he would say. "You're selling trust." He gave me the freedom to build my department as I saw fit. I hired young, ambitious reps and taught them what Oliver had taught me, that relationships are more important than transactions. By the time Oliver sold the company to Driftmore Labs last year, my team was generating $73 million in annual sales, with my personal accounts accounting for over $12 million of that. I had been through acquisitions before, but the warning signs started when they began replacing the executive team with outsiders who didn't understand our industry. Then came Vanessa with her presentations on operational efficiency and resource optimization. At first, The changes were minor. They tightened travel budgets, restricted entertainment accounts, and reduced meeting frequency. But when she started scheduling calls with my key accounts without me, and questioning the discounts that had kept our clients loyal through multiple price increases, I knew what was coming. I just didn't realize how completely she was underestimating the consequences. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Frank Donnelly, the purchasing director at Weston Commercial, our biggest client. It read, "Heard rumors about big changes at Trillic. Everything okay? Call me." Frank and I had been working together for 12 years. I had helped him through 2 company restructures, a divorce, and his son's college applications. We were more than just business associates. We had become friends. I poured 2 fingers of bourbon and called him. "Jeffrey," he answered immediately. "What the hell is going on over there? I got a call from some woman saying she's taking over our account." "That would be Vanessa Claymore, our new sales director," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "Well, she started talking about reviewing our pricing structure and implementing some new vendor management system," Frank said, his voice tightening. "We have a contract and processes that work. I don't need someone telling me how to manage my suppliers." I took a slow sip, letting the silence linger. "Jeffrey," Frank said, his voice dropping, "are you staying? Because if you're not, we need to talk." In that moment, everything became clear. My value wasn't in my job title or sales numbers. It was in 15 years of trust, 15 years of solving problems instead of creating them, and 15 years of relationships that could walk out the door with me. "I'm considering my options," I said carefully. "Well, consider this," Frank replied. "If you land somewhere else, call me first before I have to deal with Harvard Barbie again." The next morning, I received calls from 3 more clients with similar concerns. Vanessa was already making changes, disrupting relationships she didn't understand. I drove to the office one last time and found Thomas, the CFO, who quietly slipped me a folded piece of paper. "Your client retention numbers," he said quietly, "and their average annual spend. Thought you might need it." The numbers were astonishing. My accounts were not worth the $12 million I had estimated. They represented $17.3 million in annual revenue, nearly 24% of Trillic's total business. They had never told me what my client list was really worth. But now I understood why Vanessa wanted me gone. With me out of the picture, she could raise prices, change terms, and implement systems to extract more short-term profit from the relationships I had spent years building. That afternoon, I submitted my resignation letter and called my lawyer to review my non-compete agreement. What I discovered changed everything. It applied to products, not clients. I couldn't sell competitive millwork for 6 months, but there was nothing to prevent me from maintaining my relationships or selling other construction supplies. Then, I made the call that would seal Vanessa's fate. Daniel Harrison at Pinnacle Supply Group had mentioned at an industry conference that they wanted to expand their commercial millwork division. When I called, his response was immediate. "We want your expertise, Jeffrey. You know what works in this industry. We don't need to reinvent the wheel." The role was perfect. Senior Vice President of Business Development with complete autonomy to build my own division. The end of an era. When I called Vanessa to discuss my transition, her response showed just how little she understood what she had done. "That won't be necessary," she said coolly. "We've already been in touch with your clients. Gabriella will be handling the transition. These relationships are complex," I explained. "Each account has nuances that take time to learn." "We have all your notes in the CRM," she interrupted. "And frankly, your approach was rather old-fashioned. We're implementing a more data-driven client management strategy." At that moment, I knew she had sealed her own fate. 3 days later, Frank from Weston Commercial and I met for lunch. He hadn't returned Gabriella's calls, and Vanessa had already escalated the issue to his boss. "Your replacement sent me a client satisfaction survey with 48 questions," Frank said, shaking his head. Then she followed up with a presentation about their new customer success metrics. "I don't need metrics. I need someone who understands our business." When he asked where I was going next, and I mentioned Pinnacle, Frank raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. They've been trying to get our business for years." "I start in 2 weeks," I said simply. Frank slid his business card across the table. "Call me when you're settled." The next day, I received a certified letter from Trillich's legal department warning against any improper client solicitation. But that afternoon, Harold Lang, the CEO of Northwell Construction, called on his own. "Jeffrey, what the hell? This new woman is trying to change our payment terms and says our account structure needs optimization. We've been on net 45 for a decade." By the end of the week, I had received similar calls from 5 more clients. Each conversation followed the same pattern: complaints about Vanessa's approach, questions about my new position, and requests to connect. I hadn't solicited a single client. They were coming to me. On my last official day, Vanessa called unexpectedly. "I understand you've been in contact with Trillich clients," she said, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "I've spoken with some people." "Yes," I replied. "Many of them are personal friends. We consider those proprietary business relationships. Any attempt to redirect that business would constitute a breach of your separation agreement." "I understand my obligations," I replied evenly. "Good," she snapped, "because the last thing you want is a legal battle with Driftmore's attorneys." The fear in her voice was unmistakable. She was beginning to understand what she had done. My first day at Pinnacle started with a revelation that confirmed my suspicions. "We've been trying to break into Trillich's market for years," Daniel admitted. "Your predecessor spent 18 months courting Weston Commercial without getting past their purchasing department. Frank Donnelly doesn't trust easily." "It's not about trust," I explained. "It's about relationships. When Oliver ran Trillich, he understood that contracts might keep clients on paper, but relationships keep them loyal." Daniel leaned forward. "And the new management doesn't get that. The new management sees relationships as inefficient," I said. "Vanessa wants automated systems, not phone calls." Before I could elaborate, my assistant interrupted. Thomas from Trillich wanted to meet urgently. We met at a quiet bar downtown. Thomas looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder as he pushed a folder across the table. "The board meeting was yesterday," he said. "Thought you should see this." Inside was Vanessa's quarterly strategy presentation, including her client transition plan for my former accounts. But what caught my attention was the financial projection. "She told the board it was temporary disruption," Thomas continued, "but the numbers tell a different story. She's implementing price increases across all legacy accounts next month. The board approved it based on her analysis that we've been underpricing the market for years." I understood completely. Vanessa hadn't just wanted me gone to save on compensation. She had seen my client relationships as barriers to her aggressive revenue strategy. "There's something else," Thomas added, his voice dropping. "They've been auditing your expense reports going back 3 years, looking for irregularities. They won't find any, but they're building a narrative. If clients start leaving, they need someone to blame." As Thomas left, he hesitated. "I'm updating my resume. Just thought you should know." The aftermath. 2 months into my position at Pinnacle, the phone calls started coming in earnest. First was Harold from Northwell, calling the day after Trillich implemented their price increase. "That's a 14% hike with no warning," he fumed. "Can Pinnacle match our original pricing?" We could, and we did, while also adding value-added services that Trillich had never offered. Then came Westerly Developers, followed by Regional Builders and Austin Modern Construction. Each had similar complaints, unexpected price increases, rigid new policies, and impersonal service from Gabriella and her team. By the end of my second month, 4 of my former top 10 accounts had moved their business to Pinnacle. I made sure each transition was flawless, working weekends to ensure perfect first orders, and personally visiting job sites to check on deliveries. That's when the panicked phone calls began. Vanessa called, demanding to meet at a coffee shop. She arrived early, already drinking a latte when I walked in, her usual confidence replaced with thinly veiled panic. "This has to stop," she said without preamble. "What exactly?" "You know what. Poaching our clients." I stirred my coffee calmly. "I haven't solicited a single Trilla client. 4 major accounts have left us in 8 weeks. She snapped, then caught herself. "All of them mentioned you by name. Clients make their own decisions." She leaned forward, desperation creeping into her voice. "We can make this easy or hard, Jeffrey. Easy means you back off, and we don't pursue legal action." "There's no breach," I replied. "My non-compete prevents me from selling millwork for 6 months. Pinnacle's construction supply division doesn't compete with Trillick's millwork." Her eyes narrowed as she realized I had found the loophole in her legal team's contract. "You're exploiting." "I'm respecting the exact terms of an agreement your lawyers drafted," I said. Perhaps they should have been more careful. The color drained from her face as the full implication hit her. "The board is asking questions," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "About client retention, about revenue projections. That sounds like an internal Trillick matter." She tried one last desperate approach. "What do you want? A consulting arrangement? A finder's fee for leaving certain accounts alone?" I almost laughed. She still didn't understand. "I'm not interested in arrangements," I said, standing up. "I'm interested in doing my job well. The rest takes care of itself." When her face went completely pale, I knew she finally understood what was happening. The next day, Frank from Weston Commercial called about their contract renewal. "We're putting it out to bid," he said. "Vanessa's been calling me daily. Offered to beat any competitor's price by 5%. "That's a good offer," I acknowledged. "Is it? Because I'm looking at more than price here, Jeffrey. I need someone who understands our business. Someone who answers the phone at 7 p.m. when a project is in trouble." 2 weeks later, Weston awarded Pinnacle a 2-year supply contract worth $4.2 million annually. The same day, I received an email from Thomas containing only a forwarded internal message. Vanessa was being reassigned to strategic development initiatives, while they conducted a search for a new sales director. The phone on her desk must have been ringing nonstop with panicked calls from the board. 6 months after joining Pinnacle, I stood in our expanded conference room surrounded by my growing team. On the wall-mounted screen was our quarterly performance report, $13.7 million in new business with projections to hit $22 million by year-end. 8 of my former top 10 Trillick accounts had followed me to Pinnacle. Daniel walked in with champagne. "The board just approved your division expansion plan," he said. "Additional staff, increased marketing budget, everything you asked for." As glasses were passed around, my phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Trillick Q3 earnings call in 30 minutes. You might want to listen in." I stepped away from the celebration to dial into the call. Trillick's new CEO, Raymond Peters, sounded tense as he addressed investors. "While we anticipated some disruption following our strategic restructuring, sales have underperformed against projections. We've experienced unexpected client attrition in our commercial division." An analyst interrupted. "Can you quantify that attrition? We're seeing estimates that Trillick has lost nearly 20% of its annual revenue in the past 2 quarters." Those numbers are speculative. Raymond deflected. We're implementing an aggressive client retention strategy. Is it accurate that your largest account, Western Commercial, recently signed with Pinnacle Supply Group? The pause was deafening. The silence on the phone stretched so long I wondered if the call had dropped. We're in ongoing discussions with all our key accounts. Raymond finally responded. That afternoon, an industry newsletter broke the story. Trillic Woodwork struggles after exodus of key accounts. The article specifically mentioned my move to Pinnacle and the subsequent client migration, quoting an anonymous Trillic employee stating that the company had fundamentally misunderstood the value of its senior sales leadership. I received an email from Gabriella with the subject line, "Any openings at Pinnacle?" The irony was perfect. The final confrontation. A year to the day after Vanessa told me my compensation was outdated, I sat in my corner office reviewing our annual numbers. My division had generated $26.3 million in revenue, exceeding even my ambitious projections. My team had grown from 2 sales representatives to 11 with dedicated client support staff. We had moved to a larger floor, and Daniel had hinted at a board position opening up. My assistant buzzed. "There's a Vanessa Claymore here to see you." "No appointment." I paused, then nodded. "Send her in." Vanessa looked different, less polished, and more tired. Her designer suit had been replaced by something off the rack, and the confidence that had once filled every room was completely gone. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, remaining standing even after I gestured to a chair. "What can I do for you?" "I'm with Hamilton Group now," she explained. "Business consulting. I was hoping to get your perspective on Pinnacle's approach to client retention for a case study I'm developing." The audacity was breathtaking, but I could see the desperation in her eyes. "I think you already know my approach." She nodded stiffly. "I made a miscalculation at Trillic. The market is talking about how you took down a company without saying a word. That's a powerful reputation." Vanessa hadn't come for a case study. She had come for absolution or perhaps reconciliation, hoping I might throw her a lifeline in her new consulting venture. I wasn't offering either. After a moment of awkward silence, she placed her business card on my desk. "If you ever want to discuss industry trends, I appreciate the offer," I said, standing up. "But I'm fully booked these days." After she left, I glanced at the card, then dropped it in the shredder. That evening, I drove to my daughter's new house for dinner. She had just been promoted to senior architect at her firm. "How's work, Dad?" she asked as we sat on her patio. "Good," I replied simply. "Building something that'll last." And I was. Not with Wood this time, but with the same principles that had guided my entire career. Do the work, keep your promises, and value relationships over transactions. In the end, Vanessa had given me an unexpected gift. She had forced me to prove to myself and everyone watching exactly what 15 years of trust was really worth. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply being excellent at what you do.